everyone, it's me, Flero Spider, and now I'm going to be doing my ranking on the Spider-Man movie franchise from worst to best. Now, before I get started off with this video, in case you've been seeing my community posts, you're probably wondering why I've not changed my name yet. Well, one, haven't thought of anything, and two, I decided that I'm still going to be Flero Spider for now, for my own personal reasons, which I might be too optimistic, but anyway, that's not the point of this video. So, in today's ranking, all the Spider-Man movies, which I'm going to be including the Sam Raimi trilogy, the Amazing Spider-Man duology, the Tom Holland MCU films, the Venom movies, and Morbius, because they all tend to have like its own cinematic multiverse and in importance with each other. While I'm not including Spider-Man to the Spider-Verse, not just because live action, but also not canon or have any connection to the story, and this is my channel, so who cares? Anyway, let's get on to this ranking. Coming in at last place is Spider-Man Homecoming. Now, y'all are probably mad at me right now for putting it this low, or in fact at the bottom of the list, which I have quite a few hot takes on this list. Because, well, this movie is in last place. The reasons why are, well, when I watched this movie like the last two times, it's so goofy and odd compared to the Raimi films and web films. I feel like they're a lot more serious, and like even Spider-Man 3 and The Amazing Spider-Man 2, as campy and cheesy as those two can get, this movie just feels like more of a high school parody rather than what I'd expect from a Spider-Man movie. Like just a kid younger than me running around in a Spider-Man costume. Which, I don't know, it's just odd. While this movie isn't bad, though. None of these films are. This one is just okay to me. And the good things about it are the Vulture's a good villain. Also one of Michael Keaton's best performances alongside Batman. Iron Man's in it. Well, everyone loves Iron Man. And the first Spider-Man movie in the MCU, that I can appreciate. And I also like what it's setting up for the later Spider-Man movies that have not came out yet. Which is why this movie is kind of more of something I appreciate more than I enjoy. So, yeah, okay, bottom of the list. I like everything above it more than my own personal reasons.
Coming in at the top 10 is Morbius. Now, might be a little controversial for me to say this, but again, this list is pretty controversial if you can't tell already. Um, Homecoming is like the only film on this list that is just okay. From here on up, these are all what I consider good movies, which I know a lot of you are already grabbing your torches and pitchforks for not putting this in last place. And the reason why this is above Homecoming for me is the story is better, and well, I like Morbius as a character. He's one of my favorite Spider-Man related characters in the comics. And it has a good story to it, which is why I don't think it's as bad as people say. But I definitely acknowledge its flaws. I mean, remember that. It's in the bottom 2 for a reason. If you've seen my Morbius review, you just know that there's a lot we dislike, but a lot I like from this movie. And my good friend Marvel DC Extinction Wrestlers, he likes this movie way more than I do, so yeah. Yeah, he makes good points though on the villain having the same goal as the hero and what makes it interesting. But reasons why this is bottom 2 is, well, it cuts out the Spider-Man references, which, if you remember watching the trailers 2 years ago, you know there was quite a few Spider-Man references here and there. And you're probably wondering, well, how come I like Venom and I give that a pass? Well, I'll talk about that later, but with this movie, it should have had more, and maybe it would have been more understanding if this was actually in the same universe as Venom or the Webverse. And I also don't know, how did the Vulture even get to Morbius's Earth? He's from Earth 616. Why did it pull him there? Was it just pull random people who knew Spider-Man to other Earths? Like, the spell was only meant to cast the people from other universes on Earth 616 that knew Peter Parker was Spider-Man, or met a Peter Parker that was Spider-Man, if you get what I mean. It's like, another thing is, of course, Bully Maguire got a rival, which was Milo dancing, which my friends on Discord called me a madman for sending a video like that to them. But hey, I didn't make the movie. Along with, I probably should have mentioned this in my review. I don't know if I did, because it's been months, but a Dragon Ball Z reference on Morbius using a Kamehameha wave of bats in his fight with Milo. Which, it's funny, I watched this with my brother, and I was making a joke about Batman. Kind of forgot what it was, but I think it was something related to the Joker, because it's Jared Leto. But anyway, he said, Batman Dragon Ball Z, and because of the Kamehameha wave, and I'm like, oh, now I get it. And then, apparently, those memes actually read our minds, along with the popular It's Morbin Time memes. And also, Milo in the comics, he's Lucian Crown, or Loxias Crown. In the movie, his birth name was Lucian Crown, but then changed it to Milo Morbius. And a lot of things this movie has problems with, but I can enjoy it on a story level, because it's got good character motivations, and if Morbius gets a sequel, I want to see how Morbius turns to the dark side and joins the Sinister Six. And hopefully they learn from their mistakes. Coming in at the top 9 is The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Now, last time I watched it, I liked it more than I normally do. This could have been a lot higher on my list if they made things less cheesy of, like, in certain moments, such as Max Dillon getting his teeth fixed by electricity, which I guess it kind of makes sense, but it was still funny watching that. Like, why be an electrician if you could be a dentist then? And then I feel like Green Goblin was also kind of rushed. And the Rhino was being advertised as one of the main villains, even though he wasn't. And he only was there in, like, the end, setting up a sequel that will never happen, most likely. And his scenes were over the top and ridiculous. But I do like how dark this movie can be at times. And I enjoyed a lot about it, so I don't know what else is there to be said other than this better movie than the bottom two for reasons I think you can understand. Coming in at the top 8 is Bully Maguire the movie. So, the reasons it's higher than everything below it is, well, Venom, who obviously is one of my favorite Marvel characters. And then, it's also why Tobey Maguire is my favorite Spider-Man, because of Bully Maguire memes, which are top tier for me. And, well, there's just a lot to like about it, but also cringy moments like Bully Maguire dancing, and Venom was kind of rushed, what was going on behind the scenes, and I feel like New Goblin should have been more of the main antagonist, but I guess I can understand why he was redeemed, though. But I feel like he kind of should have been, like, actually one of the main villains instead of a setup character. Well, because he was a setup character. And so I thought would have been right if they had him as a main antagonist. I also really like the design for the black suit in Venom. And unlike The Amazing Spider-Man 2, this was actually a good way to end a franchise. Because it was, well, the Goblin story, or the Osborns, since the first movie was about Green Goblin and how once he died, Harry wanted revenge. Spider-Man 2 is Harry still seeking out revenge, but then finding out Peter is Spider-Man and becoming New Goblin. Then Spider-Man 3 is when he is a New Goblin, but then turns good and dies. So that's kind of what I like about this trilogy. And if you're mad at me for not putting it any lower, then I missed the part that's my problem. Coming in at the top 7 is Venom: Let There Be Carnage. Now, from here on up, these are all great movies for me. So, reason this is great, well, I thought Woody Harrelson was a great choice for Carnage, who's definitely one of my favorite supervillains of all time. So, there's obviously that to like, and if you've seen my review, you know that I actually used to call this the best superhero movie, best Marvel movie, and one of the best movies ever made. But upon rewatch, I realized it may be great, but not that good, because if you're wondering why it's a little lower for me, I kind of acknowledge its flaws. And the main flaws, I say, are, one, because of how great Carnage is in the comics. I feel like they shouldn't have killed Cletus Cassidy off. And 2, I feel like if this was rated R, it would have been better as well. Because, well, with a character like Carnage, it would have to make sense. I mean, if Spider-Man was in it, I can somewhat understand if it was PG-13, but I mean, since we're introduced to Carnage and his backstory and stuff, it would have been more disturbing, which is what I like, because, well, he's one of those villains that I like for that reason. Other than that, great movie. Coming in at the top 6 is Spider-Man 2. Now, this movie is almost perfect. There's a lot of good things about it, such as Dr. Octopus being a great villain with Alfred Molina having a good performance. This is pretty rewatchable when I was first watching it. And I also like the whole Harry Osborn Goblin setup. And him finding out that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. The only thing I didn't like was just times where Mary Jane could be unlikable. Which is why this isn't like one of my top tier favorite Spider-Man movies like it is for most, but I can understand why you like it. And I think it's a great movie still. Coming in at the top 5 is Spider-Man: Far From Home. Now, from here on up, these are all perfect movies. And, oh boy, I can already tell that you guys are surprised where a lot of these movies are on my lists. And things I like about this movie, well, Mysterio's a pretty good villain. And it's more serious than Homecoming. Like, upon rewatch of these Tom Holland movies, I thought this was a huge step up from Homecoming. And, yeah, just a lot of good stuff about it. And nice way of setting up No Way Home. And good way of showing Peter's consequence after Endgame. Coming in at the top 4 is Venom. Now, a lot of you I know are really shocked that this is so high on the list, because for some reason most people tend to put this in their bottom 3. I don't know why, but let me explain why this is so high. If you've seen my review for it, you know that I love pretty much everything about it. The comedy, the way how it feels like a sci-fi horror action creature feature, and I thought Carlton Drake was a pretty good villain because Riz Ahmed's a good actor and that was his best performance. And I also thought Riot was very underrated. And the reason I consider this a perfect movie, though, is because, sure, it has barely any Spider-Man references, but at least they were setting it up from Venom Let There Be Carnage and now No Way Home. But you're probably thinking, well, Morbius is doing the same thing. Well, guess what? Morbius had that in the trailer, but then cut it out. The Venom trailer didn't have any at all, so that's Morbius's problem, not Venom's problem. Coming in at the top 3 is The Amazing Spider-Man. Now, a lot of people originally didn't think this movie was as good as the first 2 Raimi films, but now a lot of people are starting to like it more because of Andrew Garfield's performance in No Way Home. And this has always been one of my favorites since childhood, because I watched this one just as much as Spider-Man 3 in my younger years. And I like the intensity of these Amazing Spider-Man movies with how they handle the villains. The Lizard, I think, is easily one of the best Spider-Man villains for this movie alone. And, well, let's be honest, it was already gonna be one of the best Spider-Man movies on this list, so I don't think I have to explain why. And clearly better than the second movie. Coming in at the top 2 is Spider-Man. Well, this has always been my favorite of the trilogy. Well, most of the time anyway, because in my younger childhood years, Spider-Man 3 was my favorite, and then at one point, Spider-Man 2 was my favorite, but I'd say this is my favorite of the trilogy, because, well, it's the only perfect movie on the list, and Green Goblin is an amazing villain. Willem Dafoe's performance is just as good as Heath Ledger's. And when I rewatched this, I think Dafoe's performance deserves to be just as talked about as Ledger's performance, because they're both extremely good. And I'm pretty sure a lot of people know why this movie is great, and can understand why you'd say it's one of the best superhero movies, but doesn't compete with my number 1. But coming in at first place is Spider-Man No Way Home. Not only is this the best Spider-Man movie, but it's also the best Marvel movie, the best superhero movie, and one of the best movies ever made, in my opinion. Because this, so far, the only multiversal out of all these Spider-Man movies, which is what Spider-Man's like in the comics, so it deserves to be higher on the list. The fact that it has Andrew Garfield, Tobey Maguire, and Tom Holland, all 3 of them in the movie, it's already, so good. I couldn't even imagine this movie existed. I only thought this was a movie that us fans could only dream of existing. And Green Goblin was fantastic here, just as good as he was in the first Raimi film. Maybe better because of how good the rivalry was. And I'm also curious to find out how Venom's going to be handled here. And also the Sinister Six in later movies. So, even for my good friend Marvel DC Extinction Wrestlers, he says this is like his favorite movie, and him and I always talk about why we love this movie so much, and it's like the main thing we have in common. So, if you like No Way Home, give Marvel DC Extinction Wrestlers a sub. And I hope you all love this video. I thought I wanted to do this for a while, but of course I got busy with a lot of things going on in my life, and I'm also gonna be taking a huge break from all this superhero content because now that I have over 200 subscribers, sorry, verbal dyslexia, I'm gonna be doing more horror content like I promised.